Good afternoon, everyone. You have made it to session 5. And this, just if you want calibration training and you're not tired of the sun and everything outside, you can go out there. There's a calibration training session that is ongoing by the town of Lake George truck, just outside to the right. But in here, we are excited because we want to have a presentation and panel discussion on engaging stakeholders and how we can expand the work that we've done here to the private sector, which we feel we've been in need to do. That was part of the reason for the brining co-op. And we invited, we like to have some cross-pollination here. So we invited some experts from outside the area, well, partially in the area, as well as down in New Jersey, to talk about initiatives that they've implemented and how they've tried to reach other stakeholders and businesses and engage them in road salt reduction. So I'd like to bring up Sawyer Bailey, Erin Stretz, and Kelley Tucker, please. We'll have them do either presentation or just to talk about their work, and then we'll have a panel discussion, field questions from everybody, and come away with a better idea how we can outreach to stakeholders. So with that, we'll bring Erin up. And Erin is from the Watershed Institute down in New Jersey, and there she works as the Assistant Director of Science. So here you go, Erin, and the green button is what you want to put.
All right, thank you so much for showing up after lunch and coming inside when it's so beautiful outside today. So today, I just wanted to kind of give a little introduction into who I am and where I come from, because I am representing your neighbor to the south, New Jersey. I am the Assistant Director of Science and Stewardship at the Watershed Institute. We're a nonprofit organization that was founded in 1949. We're located in Pennington, Hopewell, New Jersey, covering central New Jersey. And our main goal is to keep water clean. We kind of do that through 4 different ways. We have educators, we have advocates that go out into the community, work with school-age kids all the way up through senior citizens and everything in between. But really, the work that we do to educate and advocate really relies on what we do from a science context that kind of provides the foundation for everything that we teach. So in the science department, that's kind of where I am representing. We do a number of things. We run water quality monitoring programs, and we work on green infrastructure installations. But what I'll talk about today is the New Jersey Watershed Watch Network. This is a program that I run. It's hosted at the Watershed Institute, but it's fully funded by the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection. So it's definitely a collaborative effort between our state government and between nonprofits. The goal of this is pretty straightforward. It's to collect as much high-quality data to be included in regulatory water quality assessments as we can. And so as you all are aware, anyone coming from DEC, there's a lot of waterways throughout the state. And the integrated report is a biennial report where we look at this data kind of in a holistic manner and decide how is this water body impaired, whether it's for dissolved oxygen or phosphorus or chloride. And so it's from this data that we're able to then make changes, implement watershed management planning and things like that. So we serve, it's kind of a service-oriented network. I provide services to community water monitoring groups, which you may also have here referred to as volunteer monitoring groups or citizen scientists. It all kind of refers to the same thing. These are non-agency folks, just normal people, who go out and collect data. And they do that on a level that matches what the Department of Environmental Protection is doing. So we're ensuring that that data quality is very high. And so there's about 49 groups spread across the state of New Jersey who are participating in this network. And just so at a basic level, the Watershed Watch Network provides resources. I've provided some guidance documents to kind of standardize how the data is collected across the state. I do some volunteer training and accreditation. So we'll go out on behalf of the state, kind of do some testing, watch volunteers as they're collecting the data to make sure that they're doing it in a way that matches, what our quality assurance project planning says as well. So on top of that, on this kind of bedrock of resources that the Watershed Watch Network provides, the groups then go out to collect water quality data, engage with their volunteers, and engage with other stakeholders. From that, we have this high quality data. What do we do with it? You can create report cards for different water bodies or watersheds. You can present your data, whether that's to a school group or to your local municipality. Or, of course, that data, when it's at the highest level, can then be submitted for regulatory inclusion in the integrated report. And then from there, from the integrated report, we identify streams that are impaired. So there's areas that we need to improve upon. From that, we can then write up watershed management plans, total maximum daily loads, try to basically put that stream on a diet and limit the amount of chloride or whatever that contaminant is getting into the water body. If we find a water body that's very high quality, then we would designate that as a Category 1, and then it would receive additional protections, like wider riparian buffers and that kind of thing. But I've heard so many different people today talk about how you don't want to get regulation involved. Like that's not the high priority especially for road salting, because so much of what we do is coming from private sources. Also what we can do with that data is just present it to a municipality and get direct pollutant reduction at the municipal level or with a private business. So one of our programs, the Watershed Watch Network, is called New Jersey Salt Watch. So this is based off of the Salt Watch program that was created by the Isaac Walton League of America. We adopted this, I adapted it in December 2020. And basically what that means is I was sitting at my dining room table. I don't know if you remember 2020. Some of us do, some of us don't. But, kind of just packaging up envelopes full of chloride test strips, mail them out to volunteers who've requested the strips through our website. And the volunteers then pick whatever stream or lake site they like. The only rules are that it has to be freshwater and non-tidal. And so they go out, we kind of encourage a mix of dry and wet conditions to collect this data so we can do a little bit of comparison between baseline and what the chloride levels look like right after a snow event or snow melt. And then they submit that data to the Clean Water Hub. So it used to be through our own individual ArcGIS Online data portal. This year, starting just next month, we'll be consolidating nationally. All of this Salt Watch data will be headed directly into the Clean Water Hub. And so this is just a nice way to be able to put all the data in one place and make it very easily accessible for anyone who wants to see it. So our activity since 2020, we started off with about 75 volunteers in that first year. The next year, the data points basically almost doubled from about 450 to about 875-ish data points in the 2021-2022 winter season. And then this past year, the number of volunteers has really risen. We're almost at 150 people active just this past winter, so kind of December 2022 to March, April 23. And we were able to amass over 1,000 data points across the state. And so because there was just such a high volume of data coming in, I'm still kind of sorting through actually the data from this past season. So I wanted to just quickly show a snapshot of the previous season. There was a lot more snow in 2022, at least in New Jersey. And so we can see those red dots there. Those are areas where the chloride concentrations were found to be toxic. So over the state standard of 230 milligrams per liter. What is great about this is that we're identifying areas, water bodies that are impaired, that are not currently listed on the integrated report, which is that kind of statewide assessment document. So we're identifying places that do need to be protected regulatorily. And then in comparison to the National Salt Watch program, our percentages are coming back about the same. About 20 to 25% of our samples for any given year are coming back as at that toxic level, more than 230 milligrams per liter. And I did know, just FYI, for the Salt Watch program, the National Salt Watch program, I kind of looked in this area and I didn't really see a whole lot of data points coming from New York in general, and especially in this area. So I'll include a link kind of at the end so you can figure out how to get involved yourself. But I'll just briefly go over this. I know the focus here is definitely science to solutions. We in New Jersey kind of call that data to action. We collected the data, we know that there's a problem, right? And so in New Jersey, we've been working with the public. We're kind of taking that data, what we've learned, and applying it to the municipal level now, and that's through this program called Sustainable Jersey. This is a voluntary certification program. It's points-based. You can be certified as a bronze municipality, silver, or gold, and it just depends on kind of different actions that you can take in climate change, in energy, resiliency planning, water quality for sure. But new this year, or probably starting early next year, is a new road salt action. This is brand new. We have not launched this just yet publicly, so this is a secret behind the scenes look. But this is, again, a points-based system. Municipalities can go through these steps to gain points. And what this kind of does is gamifies the act of road salt reduction. Municipalities in the Sustainable Jersey tend to get a little bit competitive with each other, so they can say, well, I have a gold star in water quality protection and you don't, and then it encourages the municipality next door to kind of get involved in that. But it's anything from participating in the Salt Watch program as I described, or doing workforce training, continuing education, doing an inventory. Everything that we're talking about here today is kind of included in this. And so this link at the bottom, or you could just kind of Google Salt Watch, Isaac Walton. Isaac Walton is I-Z-A-A-K, Walton. And you can sign up now to receive test strips at your home. They'll mail it to you, kind of the same thing that we do in New Jersey. And you can contribute data to that national map as well. So I highly encourage you all to do that. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Erin. Next, we have Kelley Tucker, who's been the Executive Director for the Ausable River Association. I'm going to guess 12 years? 10 years. Congratulations. Awesome. Thank you for joining. And Kelley.
Thank you. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Eric. Thank you, Lake George Association. We had this event. What year did we do this in Lake Placid? It was 2018. Yeah, so it's been down here a while, and I'm glad I could come down and join you this year. We've had some of our other staff in past years, and Carolyn Kessner is joining me today. So I don't have any fancy slides. I just thought I'd tell you a little story of sort of the Ausable River Association and salt, right? And hopefully segue into some of the things that Sawyer's going to talk about. And it's fascinating to hear what's going on in New Jersey. I mean, immediately I'm sitting there thinking, gee, I wonder how many people live in 512 square miles in New Jersey. It's probably not the 20,000 people that live in the Ausable watershed. So, right away you start thinking about, well, what do you need to do professionally? How can you use citizen science? Really some cool ideas that I'm sure we'll be talking about. So thank you for coming and joining us today. So the Ausable River Association, as it exists today, was actually we did a reboot in 2014. So we think of it as two different organizations, but it was founded in 1998. And for those of you who live here, that was the year of the ice storm, right? So for those of you who live here, one of the things that started thinking us about salt is you've probably driven from Keene to Lake Placid, if you've been up north at all, along that lovely the Cascade Lakes. Well, they used to be a tree-lined drive, birch trees, thick, and they all slowly died after the Olympics came. Salt. And then the story that they tell me, because I wasn't here then, so I'm telling you third-party information at this point with no scientific data points. What they tell me is that the ice storm came and that was it. So in DOT, they tried to plant there, and right away, I mean, DEC was thinking about salt. So there's been awareness of salt for quite some time for us at the Ausable River Association and in the watershed and amongst the municipalities in that watershed. In the early 2000s, it was found that the town of Keene's groundwater supply in one tight area was contaminated from improperly stored, it's the way they did it then, stored salt in the town of Keene. So more salt. Then we found that Cascade Brook, which came out of the Cascade Lakes, and Cascade Lakes themselves, which are wonderful to paddle, and people ice climb along the sides of them, and there's an endangered species called the round whitefish in it, incredibly high levels of sodium and chloride, okay? So we're aware of it from the beginning. We decide to work with the town of Wilmington with the New York State Department of State to write a water quality management plan, a watershed management plan under the local watershed revitalization program. So Wilmington's writing the LWRP in DOS speak, and we're writing a watershed management plan, and that's my mic. And the science that we did for that identified the top 3 contaminants in the Ausable system, which is a pretty treasured system, right? West Branch, big trout fishery. East Branch, known for its flooding and ice jams. Main stem leads to Lake Champlain. Lovely space, right? Lake Placid's there. Top 3 contaminants. The first one is sand. It starts making you think about the salt problem already, right? The second contaminant is salt, chloride, rock salt. The third, way, way down the list, is phosphorus. All of these have a naturally occurring level, right? I mean, the Adirondacks, in particular, the dome is a sandy dome on top of anorthosite. So it's not a surprise that these things are in the water, but the elevated levels are, of course, a concern. So the watershed management plan sort of alerted us to that. It alerted our towns to that. Right away, towns like the town of Wilmington, I mean, Randy Preston, the town of Wilmington, started, well, how can we reduce our salt? Because we're right here by the West Branch, and we value that, right? We have Whiteface Mountain. How do we think about this? How do we bring tourists here but keep our roads safe? So they started, tracking on their own ways of doing that, right? And we started sort of singing the song of salt reduction. But we didn't quite, we're a science-based organization, especially when I started in 2014, what we call the reboot. So right away we started, well, we should start looking at some of our lakes really more closely. We should understand the Cascade Lakes. We should understand Cascade Brook. So we actually started looking at Mirror Lake very closely, and that's when we found in 2015 surprising, incredibly high levels of concentrate of rock salt, sodium chloride. So much so that it, in 2016, stopped the lake from turning over. I don't know how much you know about freshwater lakes, but most of them need to breathe twice a year, and that means they turn over top to bottom. It cools the water, it shifts oxygen. It's what keeps fish and all the critters that live there happy. And when that salt concentrated, heavy, dense water gets at the bottom and there's not enough wind or wave action, it won't turn over. And you don't want that to happen in the fall and the spring. But it was happening consistently in the spring. So with the help of the Lake Champlain Basin Program, we did an intensive study on salt from 2019 to 2022, engaging our towns, but primarily the village of Lake Placid and the town of North Elba. So I'll just wrap up and give you just a few of the things that we found, because that's sort of where we'll jump off with Sawyer. So Lake Placid's got a surface area of 124 acres. It's not a big lake. Most of you have probably had eyes on it. You might have not known if you were looking at Lake Placid or Mirror Lake. It's actually Mirror Lake that's right there next to the village of Lake Placid, right? Watershed's 741 acres, so that's pretty small. So we had total stations, 24/7, 365, around the entire, every input, every output. We knew it was coming in and coming out, okay? We measured that for 3 years. We're watching the ice, we're looking at the fish, we're looking at the bugs, we're capturing water out of stormwater drains during rain events. That's something to hire somebody to do. Oh, by the way, in the rainstorm, you have to go out and stick a bottle underneath a stormwater vent. So what we found is that if average Adirondack, in the Adirondack lakes, if average chloride concentrations are 0.2 milligrams per liter, and if in 1974 we have one data point where Mirror Lake had average chloride concentrations of 2.9 milligrams per liter, in 2019 that number went to 23.7, and that's the average. The spikes were significant. If we measured the hypolimnion, that area of water all the way down, really high, 100, close to 200 micrograms per liter. So finally, the village of Lake Placid and the town of North Elba were on it, right? They were changing practices right away. I mean, we were trying to help them, but they were kind of ahead of us, and sometimes they were with us. It was a challenging but interesting engagement. Salt use and salt intrusion into the lake increased until 2018, 2019, and from this point on, it did start decreasing. So those decreases do make a difference. We were never able to really pinpoint which changes created which increases, but we did learn one thing. I think one important thing. We learned many things. So one of the things we did is we divided up where the salt was coming from. And once again, small system, we could do it. Harder to do in like the watershed of Lake George, easier to do in the watershed of Mirror Lake. We found that 15 to 16% of the annual de-icing salt load came from local roads. 33 to 35% from state roads. Not high, there's only one state road going through there, right? 3 to 4% from sidewalks specifically in the village. And then we had 42 to 49% that was harder to tack down, but we accounted and attributed that to commercial and private applications to sidewalks, driveways, and parking lots. So this is not the same location, right? Context is everything. This is an urbanized area, perhaps the most developed lake in the Adirondack Park, arguably, right? But it was important to understand the context. And so what we thought about increasingly is, yes, it's critical to work with our towns, yes, and our villages, and to talk to DOT, and to come to conferences like this. But people make decisions every day, and they're really important. And one last thing, I don't know if you know Lake Placid, but it's not like there are commercial operations out there that you look up in the phone book and say, who's going to clean the parking lot? It's like, oh yeah, my brother's uncle. He did that those 2 winters to make some extra money. So it's not easy, once again, to pinpoint and train people and bring them on board. So that love of the lake, that love of community was what we worked with. In the end, I think a lot of our gains can come from smart decision-making by our towns, because that's where the rubber hits the road. And it's one of the reasons that we're joining forces with ADKAction, because we really are enjoying watching that engagement with the towns and bringing information to the towns with people like Phil Sexton, with examples like those that we had in Mirror Lake, but also certainly that the Lake George Association pursued in Lake George. So with that, I'm going to turn it over.
Thank you, Kelley, and so nice to have you all for the afternoon session. My name's Sawyer, not going to touch that. My name's Sawyer Bailey. I'm the director of ADKAction, and it's a pleasure to share this conversation with you both. ADKAction is an organization that really works to help people in nature thrive in the Adirondack Park. We have 7 different interactive and interconnected projects that range from helping folks get better access to reliable high-speed broadband, exploring creative solutions to help create affordable housing, ensuring that all our neighbors across the Adirondacks have enough to eat. So we're working on some really critical issues, but one of the issues we were founded on is road salt reduction and clean water, food, water, shelter. That's what we're working on. Ecosystems that pollinate, soils that are rich and can support life. It has truly been a pleasure to step in with this organization last spring. We were in the middle of quite a big change, actually, in the way we approached our work with road salt. As we've been working on it for a decade, we've explored a lot of different strategies, convening interagency working groups, commissioning research to better understand the impact of salt on private wells, and actually starting the very beginning of what was a public outreach campaign. I'm going to show you what that looked like a long time ago. It got derailed by the pandemic, but this is a bumper sticker. It says, "Hold the salt." Not only did this get us confused sometimes for a liquor distributor, but it didn't really represent the balance that we know is now necessary around salt. It's not no salt. It's how do we keep people safe and keep our water clean. So what we're proud to talk about today is the new campaign, Clean Water, Safe Roads. And I hope you've seen our table because we have an awful lot of merchandise that we're just so excited to get out the door and to hopefully get on your plows and on your trucks and into the world. But I want to tell you a little bit about where this is coming from, because what we started about 2 years ago now was another part of our strategy, and it was trying to equip our most ambitious and passionate highway superintendents with the training and resources and support they needed to succeed. And I can't take credit for their work. Phil and Deb and all our teams, Mike Farrell and his crew, you all are superstars, and you would have done this any way you needed to, but I'm proud that we were able to support you however we could. And we're doing that with more towns, more villages, more counties every year. But Mike talked about the kind of kudos he got at the end of last season. Postcards, cookies, coffee, and some really positive feedback. And we realized we want every community who is trying something new to have that level of support and that culture that really believes in what they're doing. So that's what built this new public outreach campaign that we're really launching today here at the SALT Summit. We're trying to build a level of service expectation that represents what this region is really, fit to be able to manage. And we want to make sure that people know that less salt is smarter, and it doesn't mean less safe. And there's lots of things that individual property owners can do to do their part. There's a lot that contractors who are maybe signing on for the next year can talk about with whoever is commissioning them, and that homeowners who are managing private roadways and private driveways can consider, what businesses can consider, and what new communities can consider if they're not already taking steps to make change. So there's a lot of ways that we're trying to get the word out about this, and I'm just going to show you what a couple of them look like. Again, it's clean water, it's safe roads, and we are so lucky to be working with Kelley and with Carolyn and with the Ausable River Association, because we're not scientists, we're science communicators, and these guys are the ones that have a wealth of expertise to show and to help us determine if and how this is working. So it's an incredibly strategic partnership for us, and we're very lucky to be able to have them included on this. So across the region, at our rest stops, across our winter events, our winter carnivals, you're going to see a lot of information like this. We've got some great rack cards that talk about the different reasons why road salt is an issue, be it from the infrastructure side, from drinking water side, from recreation side. We've got a whole bunch of what we think are really fun stickers, and this is sort of a little test for us, so we hope you vote and say which one you're most interested in. We're going to be switching these up just so we can really try to build some excitement around this. You've seen a lot of campaigns that are very conservative, they're salt-wise, salt sustainable, it's all good, but we're just trying to bring in a new audience. We're not trying to twist anybody's arm who is vehemently against salt reduction. They're not who we're going to bring into this work, but we are trying to make sure that residents who are interested in clean water have the full breadth of information about why this matters, and to reach people who may have a different paradigm about why this is an important issue. We've got a website up that people will be directed to that talks about how you can have both clean water and safe roads, and we're excited to feature shops like Peru, like Washington County, like Harrietstown, who are doing great work, and build support for them. We've also got an individual pledge there that can be signed, and some template letters that can be sent to municipalities to help get them involved. We're also really thinking, how do we make it easy for folks to use the right amount of salt on their own property? So we've got these individual salt shakers that are kind of right-sized for an average driveway to help show people, more is not going to help you here. In fact, it's going to be a detriment. And then finally, we commissioned some really fun PSA videos, and I'm going to show you for the first time what a few of them are. These were all filmed by Mike Hansen, who's a wonderful director we've been able to work with, and it features a lot of our staff and our staff's children. So that's one of 3 I'm going to show you, and get ready because you're going to hear the music repeated again. Okay, and lastly, I think this is our most exciting one. Okay, so you get the picture. We want to take the message from this room where we're talking with like-minded folks who believe in this and build a region that is strong enough and informed enough to help carry out this work, and to take everything that was convened in the task force report and bring it to action, because we think we're at a new start line and we're ready to go even farther with this. So thank you, Chris.
Oh, thank you.
Good job.
I would vote for the 3rd one, I think, was my favorite. I think that was it. But this is to be a panel discussion. I want to thank them all. It was great talks, and we want to field questions. Is there any online? Well, I'll start out. I guess the first, and great information, which you're reaching out. I guess the first question I had would be, what are some of the obstacles that you've encountered that have prevented what you feel is an increased engagement? And I'll let anybody take the first shot at that.
Sure. So with our program, New Jersey Salt Watch, currently we use test strips. We're mailing them out, as I mentioned. It's pretty easy, pretty simple. That's not how this program started. It started with a few like YSI or Hawk handheld meters. We were trying to prioritize, I think, data quality over accessibility. And so that first year in the spring, early 2020, in the before times, I was driving meters around the state of New Jersey, calibrating them, teaching people how to calibrate them, handing them off. They would text me, call me with questions of how to use this meter. Things would go wrong. So just in terms of engaging the public in data collection, I think we kind of realized that the data quality was an obstacle in and of itself. And so switching over to test strips, basically you take a cup, you fill it with water, you put the test strip in, and it does it for you. There's like a titration action in the test strip. They report that data. They just take a photo of the test strip. It's so much easier to get at, and it still is very high quality data across the state. Each of those test strip lots are calibrated individually as well. So it's not like it's a nonsense data. It really does mean something, and we're able to kind of turn that obstacle into a lesson learned, I suppose.
So is understanding the science or just the level of
I think
technology with
it was maybe less the science and
Yeah.
more of a technology kind of issue. Yeah.
Kelley?
And one of the ways that works in the Adirondack Park and in New York is we have two systems for water quality that rely on citizen science. One's run by the state, CSLAP, and the other's run by Paul Smith's College, Adirondack Watershed Institute, who is a partner in all of the work that we've been doing. And the results from that can be varying based on, but it has that citizen element to it. People are collecting water, they're moving it directly to the labs, and the labs are creating the data. And that kind of data, it would be interesting to know from the folks at CSLAP if they've considered joining that larger national network, but I certainly could be moved to that. Our work, because we're a small, dedicated science organization, is more focused on producing science that can be used for peer review publication and that we can take to DEC, which we have not traditionally been able to use volunteers for. So we've focused on that. But back to your question, I think one of the greatest resources for us has been the towns. I mean, the work that the Ausable River Association does, one of our one of the areas that we're known best for is our stream restoration. We are in channels repairing damaged streams, and we're known for that. But we work closely with our towns, and I think we were talking earlier, I was talking with Jerry Delaney. Each town has so many challenges. Some towns have equipment that is incredibly old. Some towns are not going to go out and buy live edge plows. Some want to buy into this. Some can't imagine how they get involved in it. And getting funding to those towns, working collaboratively so that those towns can get funds and learn from other towns, those are the kinds of things I think that we're beginning to start working with. It's sort of started here, started with Sawyer's work, started with the towns, going to other towns and talking to the guys at the DPWs and the highway departments. So at some level, that's our weakness and our strength. It'd be interesting to see what happens next.
Quick follow-up on this. To that, Kelley, because we're in the same thing, science, that's what we focus on. And working with the highway departments, we obviously, we were scientists and environmentalists, but it took a lot of donuts, really, to get to them. But we wound up connecting on the fishing and hunting levels, and that they actually saw the tree burn along the side of the roads. Did that connect with them at all, or the highway departments, or?
Well, I guess it's not fair because we connected with them by waking up at 5:30 in the morning and digging a hole in the ground at a road and putting a climate-ready culvert in. So showing up and doing the work and working the excavator and helping them with the day-to-day and making sure they had the tools they needed. And even with North Elba and Village of Lake Placid, when we did the fancy 3-year study with the LCBP money, the first thing we did is we bought live edge plows for both the facilities, so with those grant funds. And so every town's going to be different, right?
Yep.
And some guys don't like donuts, and some guys, they love donuts, right?
Okay, any other questions, or? Oh. Sorry, Deb, I get a little blinded here.
I'm a private homeowner, and my well participated in the Paul Smith's survey on wells, and there was some salt in there. I was astounded by some of the other results of the high salt content. And we have a filter on our water, but I was told that it doesn't take out salt. So I have a couple of questions. One, what do you recommend to homeowners for their well water that has some salt in it? And also, I've been trying now for a while to get brine applied to our association main drive and have not been able to find contractors who are willing to do it. So the road crews are great, they've got the knowledge, they've got the funding, but what about the little guys that are plowing the little guys driveways, and if you would look at all the roads and all the driveways, there might be an equal amount of driveways to roadways. So what do we do as a private community to address those issues?
I can talk to the well thing a little. I can talk a little to the well thing, unfortunately not in the kind of level of answer that you need. I know that most of that groundwater well work was done by AWI, Paul Smith College. I don't know what the outcome of that has been in terms of when that data was taken to DEC, and I know that there were lawsuits and those things may be ongoing. But I do know that the Essex County Water Quality Coordinating Committee and the Clinton County Water Quality Coordinating Committee and the health departments of those two counties are well aware of, and especially I've worked more with Clinton County around Plattsburgh. They might have some very specific suggestions for you in terms of filtering or options to digging a new freaking well, which may have the same source of salt in it, right? And that's an area of expertise that just immediately goes beyond what we can handle as an incredibly tiny organization. But so a partial response, but I would urge you to contact the heads of the health departments at whichever county you're in. But I wouldn't hesitate to contact both counties because they're in touch, they communicate, they share the Ausable River, so.
And I might add, if that's okay, this was one of the strong points, I think, of the task force reports. There were many strong contributions it made, but it illuminated a clearer path that's necessary for recourse for contamination, because as someone mentioned earlier today, it's very opaque to know what to do from here and then what solutions are available in order to stop polluting further as a private homeowner is difficult. But I think there's a lot of opportunity based on some of the recommendations made there around recourse. But that, we have a long way to go on that. I was also pretty amazed by the LGA development around making a private brine opportunity available with the check that you shared this morning, Chris. I mean, what an opportunity for contractors around Lake George to be able to tap into that, to be able to utilize brine. Would be fantastic to have something like that up in our neck of the woods.
Regarding the Adirondack Watershed Institute, I went with in the meetings to present that to DEC, and that was some of the information that DEC brought to DOT to lead to some of the pilot studies. So that well information in mine was tested as well. I live along 9N State Road, although the town of Hague actually maintains that. That's where that went. Regarding chloride removal, reverse osmosis, you heard, which is very expensive. That's what you heard from Jamie this morning. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, that's a situation. Sawyer's right. In the task force report, there is the recommendations to develop a rapid response task force to people's wells that have been contaminated. Regarding the brining, we did try to reach out. We did try to work with some private contractors. It wound up becoming kind of an economic issue for them, whether they invest in brining applicators and there's not the people that really want them. It's great that you do, Debbie, and maybe some others, but are there a lot of others that would make it economically beneficial? So we wanted to provide grant funding then. It didn't work. However, we went this route, and hopefully through the grant with the town of Lake George, and we will be able to bring in those applicators and have more success. So that's what we're hoping. Was there a question in the back, or?
So we've got more of a sciencey question. What would you consider to be an acceptable concentration of chloride in streams or lakes that is protective of aquatic biota, specifically for the Adirondack region?
Let's look for a scientist.
So there's, there's a state standard, at least in New Jersey, I assume it's similar in New York, of 230 milligrams per liter. Yeah. However, that's kind of a high standard. There's more research coming out recently that suggests that standard should be closer to 50 milligrams per liter to be protective of biota. And so there's some it's not just that it's completely toxic and that animals will die when they're exposed to 51 milligrams per liter, but there's research that suggests that wood frog sex ratios will vary depending on chloride concentration. More males are born than females. Fish will be born smaller, and just a lot of kind of lingering impacts that are systemic rather than deadly. So I would say 50 based on.
And in Canada, the levels are lower. I believe they're at 120, which are still considered high. But yeah, I think we would all like to see the numbers down at that level. But that would still be high for some of our lakes. And we have these wilderness lakes that we can go test, and it's significantly lower. But we have to be realistic about developed areas and areas along roadways where we have to continue to balance safety. But
in the task force, there was discussions of, because you're absolutely right with the lower background levels, Adirondack waters around 0.2 to 0.5. Right. The task force had two numbers looking at 10 milligrams per liter, but understanding that there may be areas that have with a higher level of 40 milligrams per liter. So that was the numbers that were floated for consideration as part of the task force.
And I think one of the interesting questions, if we continue the work on Mirror Lake, to ask is so a lake that's gone as high as Mirror Lake, how low can it go? What is realistic? And the problem is we won't know that answer for 10 years or 20 years. We're seeing, it's stepping downward, but still we had a very confusing non-turnover this year. We're still sort of staring at our navels as scientists going, did it turn over or didn't it? And the weather was weird too. And last year we didn't get turnover. So even as we're seeing those numbers clock down, and if you go to our website, you can see all the data, we still have questions. And it's not just the toxicity, it's the indirect effects of oxygen depletion. And there's so many things that stack onto that. So it's a complex question, a good one.
Anyone else, Bria? I'm going to touch on one, which is something that I always am intrigued about and one I need to learn more about. It's a topic of the road salt and the impacts, and is it too scientific? We touched on that a little bit, and for audiences to understand, and I've heard the great terminology today, I think science communicators. So what are some of the best ways to take this detailed scientific information and make it understandable? Graphics, is it PSAs? People dumping water in this. So what are your thoughts on that? And I know you've got working with somebody now, Carolyn, right?
Right.
With that. So throwing that out, how do we communicate these scientific ideas?
Well, maybe I can start by saying I think all of us who live in the Adirondacks know somebody who's been personally affected by road salt. So for us, it's not just a scientific issue, but it's a practical concern of daily life and of making sure that this place can continue to really be a real community. I don't know how you live in your home without clean water. I know it's a struggle for absolutely everyone who's had their wells impacted, but we also know that we want our kids to be able to get to school safe, and that people who need to get up early to go to work should be able to do that. So it's a complex problem, and I think Adirondackers are intimately familiar with its particularities. But I think that lends itself to some really unique ways to talk about how we can overcome this challenge. I think Eric this morning said this is the acid rain of our time. That's one way. It's that's a solvable environmental challenge. But it's also just how are we going to be more efficient with how we manage our resources, manage our roads, manage our water. We all want to be able to fish, to swim, to drink, to live here. And I think the more we can ground it in that, the better. We're doing that in a lot of ways that are trying to get people excited about new solutions, being proud to be in this region, to live here, to visit here, to be an Adirondacker, proud that we are doing something innovative. And I think that's one way to make this real. And if you can equip that pride with some real science facts that people can hold on to, I mean, even in those PSAs, you saw we had a statistic or two, and that even that is hard to wrap your head around, but we're trying, and we're listening to everybody's feedback, and we're going to keep trying. And I think that's really the only way.
Somebody said earlier, prior to lunch, we all know this is a problem. And we don't, right? Not everyone knows it's a problem worth bending our municipalities and our policies and our town road crews around. I think there's still a little suspended belief. You know, when the Ausable River Association started restoring streams, we got a lot of, oh, you're more worried about fish than people, because it's hard for people to see, you know, that we're protecting the water, but the water is significant. It's essential to them. But I think that's one of the reasons that I like what's happening at ADKAction. I mean, we don't know the answer. Is it a PSA? Is it a coaster? Is it a magnet? Is it more conversations like this? But we just have to try, and we have to do it in a way that taps into science, right, or engages people, so that we keep that, you know, so we're not making wild claims, but we just have to continue to find ways to talk about it that doesn't annoy or overwhelm or so.
Annoying. We don't want that.
Because I think we can all get behind the fact that we need this. I mean, this was one area loud and clear called out in the task force report. We need more people to know about this issue. But that didn't surprise Kelley and I imagine it wouldn't have surprised you either, Erin, because we all knew that more has to be done to spread the word.
So with the, I'll just add to that. So I think at the basic level, I do not think it's too complicated for people to understand. You know, we understand that the ocean is salty. We understand that fresh water is supposed to be fresh. So at like the most basic level, people can kind of understand like salt should not go in fresh water, right? Especially like we've heard so much today, we don't focus on this part in New Jersey, but the drinking water aspect. Like how can you possibly ignore that when our wells and all source water is just getting saltier and saltier and saltier? It's going to get to a point that where we just will not be able to ignore it anymore. With the Salt Watch program, the individuals who are getting involved in collecting this data, it's kind of turned into a little bit of a mini advocacy campaign ran by individuals. So, you know, some grandmother will go to the stream in her backyard and take a sample and find that her own little baby stream is contaminated with salt. And so just kind of learning that kind of connects her to this issue directly. And what some of our groups in New Jersey are doing, I'll shout out Musconetcong Watershed Association, Clean Ocean Action, and the Food Shed Alliance. They have started kind of letter writing campaigns to their municipal representatives. So they've created like form letters for the people participating in Salt Watch to add their name, add their data to that, and send it to their own representatives, hopefully to just kind of start this conversation locally and initiate some action on their behalf.
So public engaging themselves, really,
Yeah.
getting them to join.
Yeah. And I'll follow up by a couple things. I mean, I think we are very lucky to have many of our road crews so engaged on this issue.
Yep.
I mean, maybe not like, I'm going to brine just like you said we're going to brine, but yeah, we're going to figure this out, you know. And then the second thing, one of the things we say to get people to stand still for 20 seconds, one of the things we've said more frequently at the Ausable River Association, it's kind of now in our top mantra, is surface and fresh water make up less than 1% of all water on Earth. Less than 1%. That's what you rely on. That's what the food you eat relies on. You know, you think about the size of the Earth, and it's less than 1% of the water. And it's like fresh water is becoming an endangered species. And that's maybe the wrong thing to say, but because I don't want that in my backyard, but you do. So I think the fact that we live in the Adirondack Park, a place that was saved for its water. I think we have an exciting opportunity to set a model, to learn from other places, and then to create a model that works in rural communities in particular.
No. Well, I'll throw out one last question, and we'll let you close up. Erin, you had mentioned, and this will be more leaning a bit towards the regulatory side. So you had referenced TMDL studies and successes, or that they're identifying watersheds or impaired waters under the 303D list. So my experience is there's been in New York State, there's been a little bit hesitation to go towards a TMDL study direction. New Jersey, is that an idea of yours, or is that something that you've moved towards?
Well, the thought right now, we're moving towards that.
Okay.
Right now. There is not currently a TMDL for road salt, but the idea is being considered a statewide TMDL for road salt. I think really what we're kind of highlighting right now is that the integrated report is not an accurate reflection of the actual chloride impairments that are going on. And that has a lot to do with, I think, the critical period that we're doing that monitoring. So if we're collecting that data in the summertime, well, it depends if there's a drought. 2 years ago, our summertime levels were actually way higher than our wintertime levels. But it really depends when you're going out to collect that data. So if that data is being collected at a period where there's either a lot of water in the system or there's not a lot of salt being introduced into the system, then you're going to get a false kind of depressed chloride reading that's not going to be reflected in regulatory documents. So I think also the thing to consider there is, once we find that impairment, how long does it take to write a TMDL? I would estimate 8-10 years, from today to actually getting something passed, probably even longer, once it gets down to it. So we keep talking about this as an issue that needs to be solved like yesterday. A TMDL being produced 10 years from now is just not going to cut it. So we do need to kind of sneak in under the regulatory.
And I apologize, TMDL, total maximum daily loading. So that's my error. Sorry. So any last questions by anybody, or we'll let you guys, if you had any last words of wisdom for us. But I really appreciate you all and coming up and sharing your experiences with us. And maybe if you have a success, if you got a success, you can leave us with a success story. So.
Do you want to start us
Well, I think a big highlight of this program is something that I mentioned kind of briefly in my presentation earlier. It's like we all keep saying, like, we know there's a problem. The water is getting saltier. So part of me is like, do we really need to be collecting more data? Well, yes, because we need that to take that regulatory route kind of as a parallel route to everything else that we need to be doing. But one of those things that we're doing in New Jersey, I mentioned, is through the Sustainable Jersey program. It's that voluntary certification program. And so this road salt action that's being introduced into Sustainable Jersey was kind of built off of the Salt Watch data that's been coming in, and that's our way of taking that and trying to actually apply it to municipalities to try to encourage change. Just everything that I've heard today, I've just been sitting back there taking notes. They're making fun of me because I'm, jotting stuff down. And it's because Lake George really is kind of the epicenter for road salt reductions. And so we have so much to learn from you all in terms of what our municipalities doing, what our departments of transportations are doing. And so I just want to say thank you for doing this and for inviting me here so we can, as you were saying, cross-pollinate our ideas. And I hope that we'll have even more successes in the future as we take kind of what you all have done here and apply it in New Jersey. And hopefully we'll start to see municipalities start inventorying and calibrating.
Yeah, for me, all these successes are these little steps. I mean, Lake George continuing, Lake George Association continuing this conversation, the road crews continuing their good work, talking to each other, traveling to each other, awesome, right? The town supervisor that contacted me this morning paired up with the Cloud Splitter grant writer, ready to figure out how to start moving forward, and they need a little money to do it. All those little steps are important. Sawyer and ADKAction, working hard to find a way to get the message out further. All those little steps are critical, and a lot of the people in this room have helped make them. And we can include, good reporting and all of that to keep the issue in front of people. So I don't need bigger. I don't think you get bigger successes than just that ongoing momentum that we're lucky to have.
Yeah, we have some real conditions for even more success, I think, much due to the good work of the people in this room. So I think I'll echo everything you shared, Kelley, and say I think we're going to have even more successes to talk about next year.
Awesome. Well, thank you all. Let's give them a hand. Erin, Sawyer, Kelley. I really appreciate it. Thank you.